December in Chicago was bone-chilling cold. The motion sensor lights in the underground parking garage had already gone out. Ethan sat in the car without moving, letting the last warmth from the heater slowly dissipate. He pulled out his phone and played the dashcam recording from the night before. The video was fixed on a dark street, but Olivia's voice came through with startling clarity. Ingo to a hotel. Ethan hit pause. The glow from the screen cast a cold light across his expressionless face. The elevator took 28 seconds to reach the 17th floor. He turned the key and pushed the door open. The clatter of dishes came from inside. "You're home?" Olivia leaned out from the kitchen, a bit of tomato sauce on her apron, a spatula in her hand. Her smile was the same as always. "Liam has math competition prep after school today, and I can't pick him up until 6. Ethan took off his coat and set his briefcase on the shoe cabinet. His eyes swept over her face. "I'll pick him up today?" Olivia froze for half a second. The spatula knocked against the edge of the stove with a sharp clang. "Okay." Ethan didn't look at her again. He walked straight into the study and locked the door. From outside came the sound of the TV. In a family drama was playing. He plugged the dashcam's memory card into his computer. The most recent video had been created at 9:47 the night before. It was 1 hour and 12 minutes long. He dragged the progress bar straight to the 33rd minute. "Olivia." A young man's voice came through the speakers, teasing, "Is your husband working late again?" Then Olivia's laugh, sticky and sweet. Who cares about him? Ethan clipped 3 segments of the audio without any change in expression. He opened Instagram and searched for Jake. The profile picture was a gym mirror selfie. The latest story, posted 2 hours ago, read, "Grateful for the homemade lunch, someone made me heart emoji." The photo showed a familiar insulated lunch container and in the corner a half-revealed manicured nail, exactly the same design Olivia had gotten done yesterday. A knock came at the study door. "Dinner's ready." Olivia's voice was tentative through the wood. On the dining table sat a plate of braised short ribs. Then remembered Jake had once posted that his favorite food was ribs. "You look pale," Olivia said, placing a boneless piece of meat into his bowl. "Are you coming down with something?" Ethan stared at the meat in his bowl, ate half a bowl of plain rice and swallowed. "I have a business trip tomorrow." Olivia's chopsticks paused. "How many days?" "Depends." Ethan lifted his eyes and let his gaze fall on her left ring finger. The wedding band was gone. In a faint pale line still circled the base of her finger. Maybe a week. On the TV, a scene was playing where a wife got caught cheating. The woman on the screen was screaming hysterically. Olivia stood up abruptly, her chair scraping back. "I'll go get the laundry from the balcony." The washing machine rumbled on. Ethan picked up the phone she had left on the table and entered the passcode. She had not changed it yet. He opened her Amazon orders. 2 movie tickets for a matinee showing last Wednesday afternoon. That day, Olivia had told him she took Liam to the dentist. At 11 at night, the sound of the shower finally stopped. Ethan lay in bed, staring at the winding crack in the ceiling. Olivia slipped under the covers, her body full of the scent of body wash. "Let's sleep," she said, turning her back to him and curling up into her usual ball. Ethan did not close his eyes. He reached over and turned on the bedside lamp. "Who is Jake?" The quilt beside him shuddered violently. Olivia turned around, and by the time she faced him, all the color had drained from her lips. She forced the corners of her mouth up. "The new intern at the company." "Why do you suddenly ask?" "The intern? What do you think of him?" Ethan tapped his phone. The sounds of uninhibited panting from the dashcam recording exploded into the silence of the bedroom. Extreme panic flashed through Olivia's eyes. She lunged over to snatch the phone on instinct. The quilt slipped off. Her pajama top shifted askew and a purple-red bruise below her collarbone was exposed. "It's not what you think." "Ethan, just let me explain." She grabbed at his wrist desperately, her nails digging deep into his skin. Ethan shook her off with a single motion. His voice was ice. "Then what is it?" Olivia began to tremble uncontrollably. Fat tears splattered onto the bedsheets. "Just this once." I swear it was just this once. I had too much to drink. Without a flicker of emotion, Ethan swiped to his photo album and shoved the picture of the lunchbox with the manicured nail in front of her face. What about the movie tickets last Wednesday? Was that a misunderstanding too? Olivia collapsed completely onto the bed. Her hair stuck messily to her face. Her eye makeup was ruined. She looked utterly wretched. I was wrong. Ethan, I know I was wrong. Ethan threw off the covers, put his feet on the floor, and slipped on his slippers. My lawyer will send you the divorce agreement tomorrow. No! Olivia scrambled off the bed and threw herself forward, wrapping her arms tightly around his waist from behind. Her knees hit the floor with a heavy thud. Liam's high school entrance exams are right around the corner, and my mother's heart condition is so fragile. After all these years, you can't do this to me. Ethan looked down and pried her fingers off one by one, her knuckles white from the strain. When you were getting a hotel room with another man, did you think about your son and his exams, or your mother and her bad heart? The fingers were completely peeled away, and Olivia collapsed onto the floor sobbing. Ethan pulled open the wardrobe and took out a spare pillow. I'll take Liam to school tomorrow. The lock on the guest bedroom door clicked shut in Olivia's face. Through the wall, the woman's muffled crying came in broken waves, piercing in the deep night. At 3 a.m, Ethan was woken by a faint noise. He padded out of the room barefoot. The living room lights were off, and Olivia was crouched in the corner of the balcony on the phone. Moonlight illuminated her bare ankles. He found out. She had pressed her voice to the absolute lowest, thick with terror. Jake, what do I do? Ethan stood in the shadows and coughed deliberately. The sound on the balcony stopped dead. The phone clattered onto the tile floor. Innie came out to get some water. I was thirsty. Olivia scrambled to pick up her phone. The motion was too big, and from the pocket of her pajamas slid the edge of a BMW key fob. It was Ethan's car key. Ethan said nothing. He turned and went back to his room. In behind him, her breathing was quick and panicked. When dawn broke, cold rain was falling over Chicago. Ethan walked to the master bedroom door and glanced inside. Olivia had fallen asleep, curled up at the foot of the bed, still fully dressed. Her mascara had smeared into black rings around her eyes. The phone on the nightstand suddenly lit up. A text notification flashed on the lock screen. Don't be scared, baby. I'll handle it. Jake. Ethan drew his gaze back without expression and gently pulled the door shut. Passing the kitchen, he noticed the torn movie ticket stubs lying in the trash can. At 7 sharp, Liam's alarm rang. Ethan warmed up a glass of milk and set a fried egg on the table just as Liam shuffled out of his room with a bedhead. Dad. The teenager glanced around. Where's Mom? Still sleeping. Ethan pushed the plate toward him. It's raining. I'll drive you to school. Liam curled his lip and pulled out a chair. Whatever. The car was quiet, except for the sound of the wipers scraping against the windshield. Liam had his earbuds in, playing a mobile game until the car turned onto Michigan Avenue and hit a long red light. He suddenly pulled one earbud out. Are you guys fighting? Ethan caught his son's eyes in the rearview mirror. Liam had Olivia's eyes from when she was young, but right now they carried a detachment that felt beyond his years. No, Ethan said flatly. Oh. Liam dropped his gaze back to his screen, his thumbs flying over the controls. If you do get divorced, just remember to give me one of the properties. Ethan slammed on the brakes. The taxi behind him blared its horn. He turned his head and stared at his son. Who told you we're getting divorced? Just a guess. Liam shrugged, completely unconcerned. It felt exactly like this at home, right before my classmates' parents got divorced. The entrance to Hamilton Middle School was crowded with parents holding umbrellas. Liam grabbed his backpack, jumped out of the car, and tossed a parting line over his shoulder before slamming the door. I'm going to Grandma's tonight. No need to pick me up. Ethan watched the blue uniform disappear into the rain and took a deep breath. The fuel light blinked on the dashboard. He turned the wheel and pulled into a gas station at the corner. While waiting for the tank to fill, a text came in from Olivia. We need to talk. Ethan locked his screen. The drive home took 20 minutes in traffic. When he pushed the door open, Olivia was sitting upright on the living room sofa waiting for him. She had washed her face and put on no makeup. Her wedding band was back on her left ring finger. "I took the day off," she said, pushing a freshly brewed cup of tea across the coffee table. In her tone tried to reclaim its usual gentleness. "Last night was too chaotic to explain clearly. Jake is really just—" Ethan didn't touch the tea. He stood over her and looked down. "How many times did you sleep with him?" Olivia's expression stiffened instantly. She twisted her hands together. "Just 3 times. Did you use protection?" Her face went white. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "We took precautions every time." Ethan took out his phone and opened the calculator. "Based on the current market price for a condo in the Loop, this place is worth about $400,000 if we divorce. How much can you come up with to buy out my share?" Olivia's head shot up. She moved so fast she knocked over the teacup. In-brown liquid spread rapidly across the tabletop and dripped onto the floor. "Ethan, I don't want a divorce. I can't lose this family." "Then what do you want?" Ethan pulled up the photo of the lunchbox with the manicured nail. "To move him in here? The 3 of us?" Olivia's legs buckled, and she suddenly dropped to her knees beside the coffee table, ignoring the tea all over the floor. She wrapped her arms desperately around Ethan's leg. Tears gushed out, soaking into the fabric of his slacks. "Please, for Liam's sake, just give me one last chance. I'll quit my job immediately and block him everywhere." Ethan did not move away. He reached down, gripped her chin hard, and forced her to look up. "You are 35, not 15. Adults face consequences for their mistakes." Right then, the doorbell rang, and Olivia let go in a panic and wiped frantically at her face. Ethan went to open the door. A delivery man handed over an elegant box. The sender line was marked with a single letter J. Ethan opened it right in front of her. Inside was a Hermes scarf. The receipt showed an amount of $580. Olivia slumped to the floor. Her voice floated up, unmoored. "I didn't ask him to buy it. Ian just sent it on his own." Ethan tossed the box and the receipt into the trash can. "I'm staying at a hotel tonight. Pack your things." He turned and picked up his briefcase. "No." Olivia lunged again and grabbed onto his belt. "My mother is coming this afternoon to see Liam. If you're not here, she'll get suspicious." Ethan let out a cold laugh. "Perfect. She can see what a fine daughter she raised, and what a devoted son-in-law is waiting outside the door." The phone Olivia had left on the table lit up again. The screen was unlocked, and a photo of her and Jake in an intimate pose popped up. The date stamp in the corner was last Sunday, the day she had said the company was rushing a project and she had to work overtime. Ethan looked at her one last time. "Tonight, either you tell your mother the truth yourself, or I will do it for you." The front door slammed shut, cutting off Olivia's shattered scream. The hallway motion sensor light clicked on, illuminating Ethan's completely calm face. The hotel room phone rang sharply. Ethan glanced at the caller ID and put it on speaker. "Mr. Ethan, there's a Mivs. Olivia in the lobby asking to see you," the front desk said. "Let her wait down there." Ethan hung up and walked to the window. The rain had stopped. The high-rise office buildings in the Loop reflected a harsh white light. His phone held 17 unread texts, alongside Olivia's frantic bombardment. The newest one was Liam's monthly test scores from his homeroom teacher. He went down to the lobby. Olivia was sitting on a sofa in the lounge area, clutching a paper cup. Her eyeliner was streaked all over her face. The moment she saw him, she scrambled to her feet, moving so fast that coffee sloshed out and seeped into the expensive carpet. Mom already went to pick up Liam. She hurried toward him, her voice close to begging. "Ethan, let's go home and talk. There are too many people here." Ethan sidestepped her reaching hand and walked straight into the adjacent restaurant. "We'll talk right here." The restaurant was nearly empty in the afternoon. They sat down across from each other. Olivia's hand shook so much as she picked up her fork that it scraped loudly against the plate. "I went in to resign today." Ethan took a sip of coffee that had already gone cold. "In this, Jake, Did he resign too? Olivia's knuckles went white. She lowered her head to avoid his gaze. Inge just an intern, still in his probation period. A 25-year-old intern. Ethan set his cup down and slid several screenshots across the table. They were Jake's employment records. Before last October, this guy was working as a personal trainer in New York. In an intern. The fork clattered from Olivia's hand onto her plate. She looked up at him, completely stunned. You investigated him? Ethan pulled out a napkin and wiped the corner of his mouth, preparing for divorce litigation. Better safe than sorry. I told you I'm not getting divorced. Olivia suddenly raised her voice, making an elderly woman at the next table glance over. Ethan, you made a vow at our wedding. You said you would never give up on this family no matter what happened. Ethan was unmoved. He pulled a printed agreement out of his briefcase and pushed it toward her. Sign this, and let your lawyer handle the rest of the details with mine. Olivia stared at the document, her whole body shaking. She snatched up the pages and scanned the part about asset division. Her voice turned shrill. The condo goes to you and the savings go to me. You've calculated this perfectly, haven't you, Ethan? The money you stashed in your mother's account is not marital property. Ethan opened his banking app. I've already printed the transaction records of the $28,000 you transferred out last March. Olivia's face turned ashen. Her lips quivered rapidly. She suddenly leaned across the table and grabbed Ethan's wrist. He seduced me. Really? At that company team-building event. I was drunk. I didn't even know what was happening. Ethan pulled his hand free without any mercy. The first time you were drunk. What about the second time? And the third, buying movie tickets under Hermes' scarf. Was that also because you were drunk? The commotion had grown loud enough that a hotel security guard in uniform approached. Sir, ma'am, do you need any assistance? Olivia panicked and immediately lowered her head to wipe her tears. But the more she wiped, the more her makeup smeared. It's fine. My husband just isn't feeling well. We're leaving right now. Ethan got up directly and paid the bill. Olivia grabbed her purse in a rush and chased after him, twisting her ankle at the revolving door. She limped down the steps and caught hold of the hem of his suit jacket. Ethan, give me 1 week. Just 1 week. I'll prove to you I can cut it off clean. Go find your energetic little boyfriend. Ethan raised his arm to hail a cab and coldly shook her off. Right now, he's in need of a 35-year-old sugar mama to support him. The taxi pulled out of the hotel driveway. In the rearview mirror, Ethan watched Olivia crouch by the curb, breaking down into sobs. The driver glanced in the mirror. Lovers quarrel. In marriage isn't easy these days, man. Ethan didn't respond. The phone in his pocket buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. He opened it to find a naked selfie of Olivia and Jake in a hotel bed. The timestamp in the corner of the photo showed yesterday afternoon. Ethan clenched his jaw and saved the image into a folder labeled Evidence. A notification from Mark, his lawyer, appeared. We have a strong position for custody, but it would be best to get a written statement of Liam's own wishes. At 4 in the afternoon, Ethan was in a store buying a voice recorder when his mother-in-law called. He stared at the screen for a full 10 seconds before answering. Liam is with me now. The old woman's voice was hard and brimming with displeasure. Don't drag the child into your adult mess. Ethan stepped into a quiet stairwell and turned on the recorder he had just bought. Margaret, what exactly did Olivia tell you about us? You still have the nerve to ask. You're barely home for half the year, always on business trips, and Olivia has been crying her eyes out in front of me for days. Are you even a man? In the background of the call, Ethan could hear the death sound effect from Liam's video game. He tightened his grip on the phone. Do you know that Olivia has been unfaithful? There was absolute dead silence on the other end of the line. After a good 4 or 5 seconds, Margaret gave an awkward cough and blustered. A man should focus on his career. A little friction at home is normal. Which wife doesn't feel wronged sometimes? Ethan hung up. The green glow of the exit sign lit his face. An email landed in his inbox, a detailed record of Jake's hotel check-ins. The latest entry showed this morning at 9 o'clock. the Lakefront Hotel, room 1807. He took a screenshot and sent it to Olivia. At the top of the chat, the typing indicator pulsed for a long time. 3 minutes later, Olivia sent a voice message. The background was noisy, filled with car horns. "Ethan, I'm at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Me mum just heard we might divorce, and her blood pressure spiked." Ethan didn't finish listening. He sent back the high-definition photo of Jake walking through the hotel lobby. The typing indicator pulsed again. After a long while, she sent just 6 words. "Tonight I'll end it for good." The emergency room at Northwestern Memorial Hospital was chaotic in the evening. When Ethan found his way there, Margaret was sitting up energetically in her chair, scolding a nurse for hurting her with the needle. "Dad." Liam stood up from a plastic chair, still holding his phone sideways. "Grandma dragged me here." So annoying. Margaret yanked her grandson behind her, and her puffy eyelids drooped as she fixed her glare on Ethan. "What are you doing here? Coming to see if I'm dead? Where's Olivia?" Ethan glanced at the IV bag dripping glucose overhead. "Margaret, you look perfectly healthy. Doesn't seem like a blood pressure emergency." "You wish I were dead," the old woman suddenly erupted. She ripped the needle out of the back of her hand. Drops of blood spurted out and splattered onto Liam's school uniform. "My daughter gave you 10 years of her life and gave you a son. Now you want to throw her out on the street? Dream on." People at the nurses' station were all turning to look. Liam flinched in shock and ducked behind Ethan, muttering under his breath, "Grandma's gone crazy." Ethan took his car key out and handed it to his son. "Go wait in the car." Once Liam had run off, Ethan bent down and picked up the IV line from the floor. He looked coldly at Margaret, who was still gasping for breath. "Do I need to read you the hotel check-in records for Olivia and Jake?" The old woman's tirade cut off as if the power had been pulled. Her eyes widened. "What Jake?" "Jake, 25 years old, in a personal trainer." Ethan pulled up a screenshot of a transaction record on his phone. "To keep him, your daughter just bought him a Rolex last month." "You're lying." Margaret suddenly lunged at him, snatched his phone and smashed it onto the floor. The tempered glass screen protector splintered into a spiderweb. Completely unbothered, Ethan picked up his phone and dusted it off. The recording app in the background was still running normally. The Lakefront Hotel, room 1807. "If you take a cab over right now, you might still catch them in the act." He dropped those words, turned around and walked out of the ER. In behind him, the blood pressure monitor began shrieking with alarms. In the hospital's underground parking garage, Liam was kicking the car tire out of pure boredom. The moment he saw Ethan approaching, he straightened up. "Mom really cheated on you, didn't she?" Ethan hit the unlock button and pulled the door open. "You hungry? Let's go eat." "I knew it." Liam climbed into the back seat and slammed the door hard, his voice thick with suppressed anger. "Last month she suddenly bought a ton of makeup, and she's been hiding on the balcony texting every night. And Grandma still lied to me, saying you two just had personality differences." Ethan started the car. The warm air from the heater carried a slight smell of dust. "Do you want to go to your grandmother's house tonight or back to our place?" Liam bit his lip and stared rigidly out the window. "I want to stay with you." I don't want to see them." The car climbed onto the expressway. Ethan glanced in the rearview mirror. Liam was furiously typing something on his phone. The screen opened to his chat with Olivia. "Don't tell your mother where we are." "Already blocked her," Liam replied without looking up. 500 yards ahead was the Lakefront Hotel. Ethan looked at the sign and pulled the steering wheel. The tires rolled over a speed bump with a dull thud. "Dad, you're in the wrong lane," Liam said, glancing at the GPS. "You should have turned right to go home." Ethan pulled the car to the curb, just across the street from the hotel's main entrance. He dialed Olivia's number. After 7 or 8 rings, she picked up. The background was full of rushing water and a distinct echo. "Hello." Olivia's voice was hollow. "Ethan, how's my mum? What did the doctor say?" Ethan lifted his head and fixed his eyes on the lit window on the 18th floor. "Taking a shower. On the other end of the line came the sharp crash of a glass shattering, followed by a rustling sound as if someone had frantically covered the receiver. After a few seconds, Olivia's forced, steady voice came back. "And I'm in the hospital restroom." Ethan hung up. Liam was pressed against the car window, looking out at the hotel's glowing sign. He turned his head. "Dad, are you here to bust them or what? We're going home." Ethan shifted back into gear and merged into traffic. From the back seat came the sound of intense gunfire from a game, mixed with Liam's indistinct mutter. "Chicken." When they got home, the house was completely dark. Ethan opened the fridge to get water and noticed the leftover braised short ribs from the night before were gone. Liam didn't say a word. He went straight into his bedroom and shut the door with a bang. Ethan went into the bathroom to wash his face, and his eyes landed on the drain. A long strand of hair was tangled there. He bent down, picked it up, and held it to the light. The ends were a brownish red, the rose gold color Olivia had just had done last week. He went back to the master bedroom. The sheets had been changed. He lifted the pillow. In a note was pressed underneath. "Please give me one more chance. Olivia." The handwriting was slightly blurred, as if tears had fallen on it. Ethan looked at the note coldly, then opened the wardrobe to check. And Olivia's favorite cashmere coat was gone. The bottom drawer had been rummaged through. 3 pills were missing from the pack of birth control hidden at the very back. Just then, his phone screen lit up. In a message request appeared from an unknown number. The profile picture was Jake's gym selfie. The message was just 4 words. "Let's talk terms." Ethan accepted. The other side didn't waste any time and immediately sent a FaceTime call request. He answered. The background was the clanking of gym equipment. "Bro, don't make this hard for Olivia," Jake said, breathing heavily, his voice carrying a smug, provocative edge. "Honest truth, man. She's in love with me now." Ethan turned on the bedside voice recorder. "Was it good when you did her?" A laugh barked through the phone. "Dude, you're kinda twisted, you know that? Truth is, your wife has a mole on her." Ethan's face remained blank as he hit the screen recording. In Zoom, Jake sent over a video clip. The camera was pointed at a hotel bathroom mirror. Olivia was wrapped in a towel, applying lipstick. The mirror reflected the man holding the phone. "She's in my bed right now." Jake lowered his voice. "Wanna hear her moan?" Ethan ended the call. In switching back to his texts, he saw a message from Mark preparing to file. But to fight for custody, the court will look closely at the child's past living environment. "You'll need more family photos with Liam." Ethan opened his photo album. He scrolled back and realized the most recent photos were from a parent-teacher conference 3 months ago. He checked his iCloud backup and discovered that Olivia had already deleted nearly all of the family photos from the past 2 years. He frowned and walked into the study. When he pulled open the drawer, his eyes turned sharp. The lock had been pried open. Their marriage certificate was still there, but the property deed was gone. He was just opening his computer to print a scanned copy when the doorbell started ringing frantically. On the doorbell camera feed, Olivia was standing outside, her hair a mess, her carefully applied makeup completely destroyed. She was trying the fingerprint lock over and over, but Ethan had already deleted her print. "Ethan, open the door, Ethan." She began pounding on the door. "I know you're in there. Please let me in." Ethan ignored her and clicked print. The printer began to hum. When knocking didn't work, Olivia started kicking the door. The noise was so huge that the neighbor across the hall poked their head out to look. "Dad!" Liam suddenly yanked his bedroom door open and yelled in frustration. "Can you make her go away?" "I'm trying to study." Ethan walked to the entryway. Through the peephole, he could see Olivia crouching on the floor, digging for a spare key. Around her wrist was a ring of stark red marks, the kind left by a belt pulled hard. "Call the police." Liam came over, chewing on his thumbnail. "Say there's a crazy woman causing a disturbance in the hallway." Ethan pressed the handle and pulled the front door open. Carried by her momentum, Olivia stumbled forward and crashed onto the entryway rug. A strong smell of perfume mixed with alcohol hit them. "Liam!" She looked up, saw her son, and her eyes lit up. She reached out to hug him. Liam recoiled to the side with disgust. "Don't touch me." That's gross. He retreated quickly to his room and locked the door. Olivia froze. She sat collapsed on the floor. In her expensive stockings were torn with holes. In her knees were scraped and oozing small beads of blood. Ethan. I ended it with him. Completely. Really. She looked up at him, her eyes unfocused. Ethan took out his phone and played the video Jake had just sent. He held it up in front of her face. You ended it so completely you even had a towel wrapped around you. Olivia's face went stark white. She clawed at the phone like a madwoman, using so much force that what remained of her manicured nails snapped and flew off. He forced me to film that. Innie didn't want to. All 3 times you were forced. Ethan shut off the video and watched her coldly. Olivia suddenly flipped over onto her knees and began knocking her head against the floor with dull thuds. I was wrong. I'm disgusting. I was out of my mind. Please don't kick me out. Ethan bent down, grabbed her by the collar and forced her to look at him. Where is the property deed? At my mum's place. A trickle of blood had appeared at the corner of Olivia's mouth from the knocking. She said she was afraid you'd hide the assets, that she had to protect me. Ethan let out a cold snort and let go, and Olivia slid back to the floor like a rag doll. The phone in her pocket slipped out, the screen still on, showing a missed call from Jake. Get out. Ethan pointed at the door. Come back during the day tomorrow and take all your stuff. Olivia crawled forward and wrapped herself around his calf. Mucus and tears smeared together. I have nowhere to go. Me mum will die if she knows I'm getting divorced. Please, Ethan. Ethan kicked her hands away with force. The lakefront hotel room, 1807. There's a spot in that bed for you. In the hallway. The neighbor's door slammed shut with a bang. Hearing that door close, Olivia's crying suddenly stopped. She pushed herself up using the shoe cabinet and wiped the filth from her face with the back of her hand. Fine, we can divorce. Her tone abruptly turned eerily calm, as if the hysterical woman from moments ago was someone else entirely. Liam comes with me. The condo gets sold and we split it 50-50. Ethan looked at her calculating expression and let out a laugh of pure disbelief. Do you know how many years you get for bigamy? Olivia's pupils contracted sharply. What are you talking about, bigamy? Jake's wife contacted me this afternoon, Ethan said, pulling up screenshots of a chat. They got their marriage license in New York. I've even seen the wedding photos. It was as if Olivia had been struck by lightning. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed to her knees once more. Her phone started buzzing violently. The caller ID showed Mum. Her hand shook as she pressed answer. Hello. He knows everything? Margaret's piercing shriek came through the speaker so loudly it didn't even need to be on speakerphone. Ethan didn't bother with the mother and daughter any further. He turned and walked toward the study. In behind him, Olivia's completely uncontrolled wail tore through the air. Jake, you son of a... At the other end of the hallway, Liam's bedroom door quietly cracked open. The teenager held his phone up, the camera aimed steadily at his mother, who was sprawled on the floor screaming hysterically. He was recording. Ethan patted his son's shoulder as he passed. Get a clear shot. We can use it in court. At 4 in the morning, Ethan woke up on time in his hotel's single bed. Since he had thrown Olivia out of the house, he had been staying at a hotel to prevent her from coming back with people to cause trouble. In a sliver of grey light, slipped through the gap in the curtains and fell directly on the voice recorder on the nightstand. He sat up, opened his laptop, and imported the data from the recorder. The waveforms of Olivia's breakdown from the night before jumped onto the screen. The first time was at the company holiday party. I was drunk. The woman's voice on the audio was hoarse and trembling. The next 2 times he had photos and threatened to tell you if I didn't go. Ethan dragged the mouse across the timeline without expression and cut away all the pleading and self-justifying nonsense. All his lawyer needed were the few sentences where she explicitly admitted to the affair. His phone buzzed with a text from Mark. The key to winning custody is 2 things. First, your financial stability. Second, the strong preference of the child. As long as Liam is firm about staying with you, the mother won't be able to take him. Outside the window, the surface of Lake Michigan was a dreary grayish blue. Ethan created a new folder named Evidence 03 and dragged last night's chat logs and the video from Jake into it. When he went to wash up, the hotel's water heater swung between hot and cold. In the mirror, the man looking back had deep, dark circles under his eyes and a growth of stubble. The razor nicked his chin as he shaved, and a bead of blood welled up. At 7 on the dot, Liam called. "Dad, I'm going to be late for school." Ethan pressed a towel to the cut on his chin. "Grab a cab and save the receipt and I'll reimburse you." "Okay." Liam paused and his voice turned odd. "Mum sent me like a dozen texts in the middle of the night. In said she can't go on living and is going to jump off a building." Ethan's hand holding the towel stopped. He stared at his reflection. "What did you say back?" "I didn't reply. I just blocked her," Liam said with a huge yawn. "Then Grandma used her account to call me heartless. Said she raised me for nothing." Ethan tossed the towel aside. "Focus on school. Don't worry about the grown-up stuff." At 8, Lakeshore Drive was a parking lot of rush-hour traffic. Ethan sat in his car and opened the Find My app, the one he had secretly linked to the Apple Watch he gave Olivia for their anniversary last year. The dot on the screen showed the watch was currently at the shopping center on Michigan Avenue and had been stationary for over 2 hours. On the 38th floor of Water Tower Place, in Mark's law office, Ethan handed over the USB drive. "The materials are basically complete," Ethan said, pulling out a chair. "Recordings, hotel videos, and the printed records of Jake's hotel bookings." Mark quickly scanned the files on his computer and pushed his glasses up. "Jake is actually married. Registered in New York. The wife is pregnant." Ethan opened his phone and handed over the evidence Jake's wife had sent the night before. The photo showed a woman in a maternity dress standing outside a city clerk's office holding up a marriage certificate. The date was clearly visible, May of last year, cheating while his wife is pregnant and swindling money. "This helps a lot," Mark said, tapping on the keyboard. "Bigamy is a criminal complaint that can turn into a public prosecution. As long as his wife cooperates and files a report, he definitely won't get away. But our first priority is to win your divorce case. Liam is 14. The court will give heavy weight to his preference." Right then, Ethan's phone screen lit up. He glanced at it. It was an alert from his bank. He immediately opened his banking app and checked the transaction history of Margaret's account. Just last week, $15,000 had been transferred out. The recipient was listed as Jake Personal Training Studio. Ethan narrowed his eyes and stood up abruptly. "I need to step out." The Michigan Avenue shopping center had just opened for the morning and was sparsely crowded. Following the location signal, Ethan found his way to the second-floor women's restroom. A janitor was placing a "closed for cleaning" sign out front. "Excuse me, what happened in there?" The janitor lowered her voice. A woman passed out inside a bit ago. In there was a lot of blood. The ambulance just took her away." Ethan glanced inside the stall. Along with traces of vomit on the floor, there were a few drops of blood that had not been fully cleaned. In the trash bin sat a half-empty cup, the label reading matcha latte, Olivia's usual order. The GPS dot on his phone suddenly started moving fast and finally stopped at Northwestern Memorial Hospital South Campus. The hallway of the ER was thick with the smell of antiseptic. As Ethan walked in, he came face to face with Margaret, who was clutching a payment slip in her hand. The old woman's hair was a mess. When she saw him, she looked as if she had seen a ghost and instinctively stumbled back 2 steps. "You... what are you doing here?" Ethan didn't answer. His gaze moved past her into the ER bay. The curtain was half open. Olivia lay on the bed, her face deathly pale, an IV line attached to her wrist and an oxygen mask over her face. What happened to her? The ER doctor came out at that moment, holding a chart. "Hypoglycemic shock, plus a threatened miscarriage. Family needs to go pay the hospital admission fee right away." The words "threatened miscarriage" dropped into the air and froze everything. Margaret's hand shook, and the payment slip fell to the floor. She bent down in a panic to pick it up, but her medical files slipped out of her tote bag. In a freshly printed ultrasound report was tucked inside. Ethan was faster. He stepped on the paper, bent down, and pulled it out. Margaret tried to snatch it back, but it was too late. Suddenly, as if all the strength had been drained from her body, she collapsed onto the cold tile floor of the hospital corridor and began to wail. What a sin! That murdering personal trainer. He swindled the money and now he's done this. Ethan looked coldly at the ultrasound report in his hand. The gestational age lined up perfectly with the day they had checked into the hotel last week. He turned around and pushed open the door to the hospital room. Hearing the footsteps, Olivia slowly opened her eyes. In the moment she saw Ethan, her pupils contracted violently. Her breathing became rapid, and a fog of white instantly coated the inside of her oxygen mask. The baby is Jake's. Ethan stood at the foot of the bed, his voice utterly flat, and Olivia tore the oxygen mask off. The lips beneath it, cracked and bleeding, trembled fiercely. Are you satisfied now? You won't be happy until you've driven me to my grave. I am not the one driving you to your grave, Ethan said, taking out his phone. He pulled up the prenatal checkup report Jake's wife had sent that morning and held it right in front of Olivia's eyes. His wife is 22 weeks pregnant. Take a guess. Is he busy comforting his wife at her prenatal visit? Or is he busy trying to calm you down? Olivia stared at the name and date on the screen. Suddenly, a horrifying, shrill laugh tore out of her throat. The sound was like fingernails scraping across glass, making the patient in the next bed look over in alarm. Liar. They're all liars. She clawed at the IV needle in the back of her hand like a madwoman. He told me he'd been divorced for 3 years. He told me I was the only one he loved. Blood streamed from the puncture site and dripped onto the pristine hospital gown. A nurse rushed in at the sound and frantically tried to hold her down. Ethan put his phone away and looked down at her thrashing form from above. I've emailed you the divorce agreement. Sign it by the end of the day. He turned and walked out of the hospital room, leaving Olivia's hopeless wailing behind him. Stepping into a quiet stairwell at the end of the inpatient wing, Ethan dialed Jake's number. It rang 7 times before the other end picked up. Yeah? The hum of a treadmill ran in the background. Ethan pressed the record button. Your wife is pregnant. Congratulations. The breathing on the other end instantly turned heavy, and the treadmill stopped. Damn! She contacted you? Jake's voice was laced with barely concealed panic. Bigamy, up to 3 years in prison, Ethan said, looking out the window at an ambulance speeding by. Your wife has a complete chain of evidence, and she is very willing to cooperate with me in filing a police report. A loud crash, like a heavy weight hitting the floor, came from the phone. When Jake spoke again, his voice had turned soft and ingratiating. Bro. Inman, let's talk this out. That woman was just after my body. Innie swear to me she was just a fling. I have the security footage from the lakefront hotel. Ethan cut him off. I also have the records of you taking a female client from your gym to a hotel last December. Jake fell completely silent. After a solid 10 seconds, he spoke through gritted teeth. How much do you want to keep quiet? Tomorrow morning at 10, bring the $15,000 you scammed from Olivia to the law office on the 38th floor of Water Tower Place. Ethan paused and his voice went cold. Don't be late. And just so you know, Olivia is pregnant. She's in the hospital right now trying to keep the baby. He hung up the phone cleanly. In the afternoon, Ethan drove to school to pick Liam up. He had barely pulled over when Liam slipped out the back entrance and climbed into the passenger seat like he was making an escape. Dad! Drive! Mom was at the front gate trying to block me. Ethan frowned. She's supposed to be in the hospital. What is she doing here looking for you? She's lost her mind, Liam said, buckling his seatbelt and thumping his chest. She grabbed my hand and said she's taking me abroad. She said she'd sell the condo to pay my tuition. I saw her bag was full of pills and bloody tissues. It freaked me out. A shadow crossed Ethan's eyes. He hit the gas and sped away from the school. That evening, the father and son had just finished takeout when the doorbell rang. Ethan opened the door. Olivia stood outside, dragging a massive suitcase. Her face was as pale as paper. It was obvious she had just forced herself out of the hospital. Even the heel of one of her pumps had snapped off. "I came to pack my things," she said, her head bowed. Her voice was so faint, it seemed she might collapse at any second. Then stepped aside to let her in. Olivia walked straight into the master bedroom, pulled open the wardrobe, and mechanically began stuffing clothes into the suitcase. A bottle of expensive perfume was left open, and a dark stain spread across a silk blouse, but she didn't seem to notice at all. Liam stood at the door, watching her coldly. Suddenly, he rushed into the room and yanked something out of a hidden pocket in her half-opened suitcase. It was a pair of black men's boxer briefs. "That's disgusting!" Liam furiously flung the Calvin Klein underwear straight into Olivia's face. "You're leaving this family and you're packing your lover's underwear." Olivia froze as if she had been slapped. She slowly pulled the underwear off her face and looked at the size tag. As if every bone had been pulled from her body, she sank softly to the floor among the piles of clothes. Liam. Mummy was so wrong. She covered her face with both hands and let out the most hopeless cry of the day. Liam ignored her. He took 2 steps back, raised his phone, and started recording. "Mr. Mark said we'd need proof in court that your mental state makes you unfit to raise me." Olivia's crying stopped dead. She stared through her tangled hair at her own son holding up his phone, her eyes filled with shock and incomprehension. You've all been plotting against me? Where is the property deed?" Ethan stepped forward and looked down at her coldly. It's in the safe at my mum's place." Olivia answered mechanically. "The key is behind the wedding photo in her bedroom." Before she could finish, the phone that had fallen to the floor began to vibrate furiously. The screen flashed with the word "Mum." As if grasping for the last straw, Olivia snatched up the call. "Hello, Mom." From the phone, Margaret's shrill scream came through the speaker with perfect clarity. Olivia, that murdering personal trainer, took the money and ran. He sold the studio. Ethan grabbed the phone and put it on speaker. "What money?" "Your father's life insurance money." Margaret was sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. $230,000 in all invested in that con man's gym. "It's all gone, not a cent left." Olivia sat there, completely stupefied. She suddenly lunged forward like a corpse reanimating and grabbed for the phone, screaming into the microphone. "Mom, what are you talking about? That was my money." Ini lent it to him. A heavy thud came from the other end of the line, followed by a neighbor's panicked cry. "Oh my God!" The old lady collapsed. "Someone call 911. The call ended. Ethan grabbed his car keys off the coffee table and shoved them into his pocket. "Your mother is probably having a stroke. She's on her way to the hospital." Olivia didn't move. She remained kneeling on the floor, clutching the pair of men's underwear that did not belong to her husband. Suddenly, she let out a short, hysterical, cackling laugh. Karma. Her eyes were completely vacant as she stared into the empty wardrobe. "It's all karma." Liam hid behind Ethan and tugged gently at the hem of his father's shirt. His voice trembled. "Dad, is she really going crazy?" The faint sound of ambulance sirens drifted up from the street below. Ethan took out his phone and snapped a clear photo of his wife, collapsed and laughing and crying amid the wreckage on the floor. He opened his chat with Mark and sent the photo. "The case file is complete." The glass doors of Lakefront Fitness reflected Ethan's expressionless face. He adjusted the voice recorder hidden under his shirt collar and pushed the door open. The receptionist at the front desk was bent over, painting her nails. "First time here, sir. Do you need a fitness assessment?" Ethan ignored her and walked straight to the personal training area at the end of the hall. The air was thick with the sweet smell of protein powder and sweat. Several muscular men were coaching clients. One of them, a man with bleached blonde hair, had his back to the door. His hand rested inappropriately on a female client's waist. "Lift your glutes a little more." Jake's hand slid lower. "Yeah, right there. Engage right there." Ethan walked over and tapped the equipment rack. Not too hard and not too soft. Jake turned his head, a professional smile still on his face, But the moment he recognized Ethan, the smile froze solid. He quickly pulled his hand back, muttered a few words to the female client, and walked toward the fire exit stairwell, his face dark. Ethan followed him in. The fire door slammed shut, cutting off the music from outside. "I didn't bring the money," Jake said, flexing his arm muscles so his tight t-shirt stretched, trying to use his size to intimidate. Ethan didn't waste a word. He pressed the switch on the recorder. "Criminal charges for bigamy with civil damages attached. I've done the math. At least 200,000. Who are you trying to scare?" Jake let out a scoff and leaned against the stair railing. "I already divorced that hag in New York." Ethan didn't reply. He simply swiped open his photo album. Next to a photo of Jake's marriage certificate was a prenatal checkup report, gestational age 23 weeks and 4 days. "Married last May, and still posting lovey-dovey photos with your wife in March." Ethan enlarged the screen and held it inches from Jake's face. "Your wife added me on Instagram last night. In as of yesterday. She had no idea you were being kept by another woman here in Chicago." Jake's face twisted. He suddenly lunged to grab the phone. Ethan had anticipated it. He sidestepped cleanly and drove an elbow hard into Jake's ribs. A grunt of pain escaped Jake as he doubled over, coughing violently while clutching his side. Ethan looked down at him from above and played another video. The footage showed Jake with his arm around Olivia, walking into the lakefront hotel. The date stamp was clearly last Sunday. "The evidence chain for bigamy is complete," Ethan said coldly. Cold sweat instantly rolled down Jake's temples. The sweat soaked through the collar of his shirt. The cheap cologne mixed with the smell of sweat filling the stairwell. He looked around frantically. Seeing no one, he dropped straight to his knees on the concrete floor. "Bro." He lowered his voice, his arrogance instantly flipping into a plea. "It was all Olivia. That old hag seduced me." Ethan played the audio he had recorded the day before. In Jake's own smug, provoking words about Olivia's body echoed loudly in the empty stairwell. The blonde trainer's face cycled through shades of white and green. He suddenly raised his hand and slapped himself twice across the face with crisp smacks. "I'll return the money. The 15 grand, I'll wire it back tonight. In, bro, just cut me some slack. Please don't tell my wife. Her father is a prosecutor in New York. If he finds out, he'll destroy me." Ethan stepped back, dodging Jake's reaching hands. "Not just the 15,000, also the 8,000 in credit card charges she ran up for you." "That was all her. She wanted to buy me a watch." Jake's voice pitched up in desperation, but one look at Ethan's icy expression made him swallow his words. "Fine. I'll pay it back. Even if I have to sell everything I own, I'll pay it back. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, bring the money to the law office on the 38th floor of Water Tower Place to sign the settlement agreement." Ethan pushed the fire door open and threw his last words over his shoulder. "And just so you know, Olivia is pregnant. She was just admitted to the ER last night." Jake's mouth hung open, his expression like a man who had swallowed a whole fly. He was still frozen in place long after the receptionist came looking for him to start his next session. Leaving the gym, Ethan drove to the south campus of Northwestern Memorial Hospital. In the neurology ward of the inpatient building, Margaret lay with a feeding tube in her nose. In half, her body was paralyzed from the stroke. She was cursing at the nurse's aide through her slurred, crooked speech, then set a fruit basket on the nightstand. The aide leaned in and whispered. Her daughter just ran out in tears. In said she was going to the police station to file a report. Ethan glanced at the phone on Margaret's bedside table. The screen was still lit with a text alert from Chase. In a withdrawal of $150,000. It seemed the insurance money had indeed been transferred away by Jake. He turned, went downstairs, and crossed the street directly to the local police precinct. Just as he reached the entrance to the reception area, he heard Olivia's hysterical voice. "I want to report Jake for fraud. He swindled me out of over $200,000. The desk officer didn't even look up and handed her a form. Do you have a promissory note?" Olivia choked up. Her hands shook as she fumbled with her phone. "No promissory note. But I have the transfer records. He also tricked me into buying him a watch." Ma'am, money transfers and gifts given during a romantic relationship are very difficult to classify as fraud without clear evidence of a loan agreement. At best, it's a civil dispute, the officer said in a matter-of-fact tone. Please fill out the form first. Olivia gripped the pen, but her hand trembled so badly she could barely write. The ink blotted into an ugly stain on the paper. Ethan pushed the door open and stepped inside. His shadow fell across her form. You knew all along, didn't you? Olivia's head snapped up, the whites of her eyes laced with red as she fixed her stare on him. You watched me jump into the fire on purpose. You watched me hand over all my money to him. I warned you 3 times. Ethan said flatly, as if looking at a stranger. You were the one who believed you had found true love. The tip of Olivia's pen stabbed through the paper with a crack. You hate me. You vastly overestimate yourself, Ethan said without sparing her another glance. He turned and sent a text to Mark. Tomorrow morning at 10. Have Jake come in. He had just walked out of the precinct when Liam's call came in. The sound of a school bell rang in the background. Dad, Mom came to school again. Liam's voice was low and thick with disgust. She forced her way through the gate. Security has her held in the front office. She says she has my passport and she's going to take me away. Stay in your classroom and don't move. I'll be there in 10 minutes. A police car was parked at the front of Hamilton Middle School. When Ethan arrived, Olivia was sitting on the floor of the security office, her hair a wild mess, clutching her prized Louis Vuitton bag to her chest. The zipper was open, spilling pillboxes and bloodied tissues across the floor. I'm her husband. We're going through divorce proceedings, Ethan said, showing his ID to the responding officer. Ex-husband, Olivia shrieked. You want me dead so you can have the condo all to yourself. Liam came running from the school building at that moment. He saw his mother on the ground and instinctively ducked behind Ethan. Liam, you're all Mommy has left. Olivia scrambled and crawled forward, trying to reach her son. The teenager wrinkled his nose in disgust and stepped back again. Don't touch me. The officer, seeing the situation, took hold of Olivia's arm. Ma'am, your mental state appears highly unstable right now. Do you need us to call an ambulance? Hearing the word ambulance, Olivia suddenly stopped, struggling. She let out a neurotic laugh, slowly picked herself up off the floor and dusted off her clothes. You win, she said, her eyes fixed on Ethan, utterly hollow. The condo is yours. Liam is yours. I don't want anything anymore. The setting sun cast long shadows from the school gate. Ethan watched Olivia climb into a cab, thanked the officer, and took Liam to his car. At 3 in the morning, the hotel room phone rang with a jarring shrillness. The caller ID was Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Mr. Ethan, your wife Olivia is in the gynecological ER. A medical abortion has caused a massive hemorrhage. We need a family member to come and sign consent forms immediately. When Ethan arrived at the hospital, the sharp, metallic smell of blood filled the hallway. A nurse handed him a stack of consent forms. The fetus was already formed, but it couldn't be saved. Additionally, the patient has a uterine perforation and may need a hysterectomy. Ethan quickly signed his name. Is she conscious? Her emotional state is extremely unstable, the nurse said, pointing toward the resuscitation room. Ethan pushed the door open and went in. Olivia lay on the stark white sheets. Her lower body was soaked in blood. She was so weak, she could barely open her eyes, but at the sound of his footsteps, she laboriously pulled off her oxygen mask. Ethan. Her voice was like sandpaper. That baby. It wasn't actually Jake's. Ethan stood at the foot of the bed, took out his recorder, and pressed the button. So Jake was the 4th. It was. It was the director at the holiday party. Olivia's tears rolled down from the corners of her eyes and disappeared into her matted hair. He kept pouring me drinks. Innie didn't dare say no to him. The beeping of the medical equipment echoed clearly in the resuscitation room. Olivia stared up at the harsh surgical light and pulled the corner of her mouth into an ugly, broken arc. Ethan, did you ever even love me? That's no longer important, Ethan said, putting the recorder away. A doctor walked in and gestured for Ethan to leave. The red light above the operating room doors switched on immediately after. By daybreak, Mark had sent a text. Jake and his wife are already here. The conference room at the law office was heavily air-conditioned. When Ethan pushed the door open, Jake was sitting in a chair, his leg bouncing frantically. His very pregnant wife, Jessica, sat at the other end of the long table, her face completely expressionless. "Here is all the evidence," Jessica said, pushing a thick document envelope across the table to Mark. Her neatly trimmed nails tapped lightly on the surface. "Marriage certificate, prenatal records, and the transaction records of the money he scammed from my father in New York." Mark quickly flipped through the materials. "The chain of evidence for bigamy is very solid. Mrs. Jessica, if you, as the legal wife, cooperate with the criminal complaint, it's an open and shut case." Jake shot up from his chair. His bleached hair, now a mess from being raked through, looked like a clump of dried weeds. "Honey, just let me explain. I was totally set up by that old hag. She threw herself at me." Jessica lifted her eyelids coldly, not even bothering to spare him a look. "Jake, you are facing more than just bigamy charges. I've also brought the evidence for fraud." She opened her phone's photo album and swiped through screenshot after screenshot. "You swindled Olivia out of $230,000. You conned a Ms. Wang from a yoga studio out of $100,000. You got $180,000 from your ex-girlfriend. For over half a year, you used the exact same script to string along 6 different women across the country. Do I need to pull up the group chat with all 6 of these women and read it out to you?" Jake's legs gave out completely. He slid straight to the floor on his knees. "Honey, I was wrong. I'll pay it all back, okay? Please don't call the cops. I don't want to go to prison." Mark pushed a settlement agreement and a promissory note across the table. "Sign it and provide a full account of where all the funds went." With a shaking hand, Jake grabbed the pen. He had just signed his name when the conference room door opened. 2 detectives from financial crimes walked in. "Jake, we've received multiple reports. You are implicated in several fraud cases. Come with us." Jake completely collapsed onto the ground. The acrid smell of urine seeped from his pants. He looked up at Jessica in terror. "Honey, you called the cops? You said if I signed, you wouldn't call them." "I never agreed to that," Jessica said, standing up and shielding her belly as she walked out. "By the way, I'll have the divorce papers delivered to you at the detention center." Ethan watched Jake being handcuffed and dragged away. He put his recorder away and turned to Mark. "Does he have any assets we can collect against?" "We just confirmed. This punk used the scammed money to buy a small condo here in Chicago, paid in full," Mark said, closing his laptop. "We'll file for an asset freeze next week. Then there's a good chance we can get Olivia's money back." Leaving the law office, Ethan received a call from the psychiatric hospital. After her miscarriage surgery and extreme mental trauma, Olivia had displayed severe self-harm tendencies. She had been involuntarily transferred to the Chicago Psychiatric Center. The ward was saturated with the smells of disinfectant and sedatives. Olivia was strapped to the bed with restraints, staring at the ceiling and humming a tuneless melody. Her wrists were covered in bruises from her struggling. Hearing the footsteps, she whipped her head around, her bloodshot eyes locking onto Ethan. "Ethan, did you go pick Liam up from school? Remember to buy ribs. He loves them." A nurse quietly reminded him from the doorway. "The patient just had a sedative and is experiencing memory confusion. Please try not to agitate her if you're family." Ethan stood at a safe distance and spoke calmly. "Jake has been arrested." The smile on Olivia's face vanished instantly. She began thrashing violently on the bed, the restraints pulling tight against her hospital gown. "Liar! Said he was going to take me to the Maldives. He used the exact same script on 6 different women," Ethan said, taking out his phone and playing the recording of Jake begging on his knees in the law office. The man's fawning, venomous voice filled the ward. "That old hag threw herself at me." Olivia suddenly stopped struggling. Her pupils dilated. Drool trickled from the corner of her cracked mouth. 6. Right then, Ethan's phone buzzed. It was Liam calling. "Dad." The teenager's voice was tight with suppressed fury. "Mom's bank account got frozen. I went to check the balance. She completely drained the savings account that had all the money I've been saving since I was a kid. $80,000 gone. Ethan looked at the hospital bed, where Olivia, upon hearing the truth, had begun to slam her head violently against the metal guardrail. He covered the phone's microphone. "I know. We'll talk at home." The doctor outside walked quickly into the room and directed the nurses to administer more sedatives. "The patient is now in an extremely dangerous condition and has completely lost legal capacity," the doctor said, holding a document out to Ethan. "Her mother is incapacitated by a stroke and cannot speak. As her spouse, you'll need to sign this consent for involuntary commitment." Ethan took the pen and signed his name, then added, "We are in the middle of divorce proceedings." The doctor paused for a moment, then nodded. "Then it's best to expedite the special legal proceeding. For a divorce involving a mentally incapacitated spouse, the court will issue a direct ruling." The next evening, another urgent call came from the hospital. "Miss Ethan." The patient slipped away while the nurse wasn't looking. "She's on the roof of the inpatient building now." When Ethan got to the roof, the wind was fierce. Olivia stood barefoot on the outer edge of the railing in nothing but her thin hospital gown, her body swaying precariously. Far below, firefighters were frantically deploying an air cushion. "Don't come any closer." Seeing Ethan, she screamed and leaned backward, her long hair whipping wildly in the wind. "You're all in on it together to destroy me. Even Liam doesn't want me anymore." A crisis negotiator was trying to soothe her through a bullhorn, but the wind shredded the words. Ethan stepped around the police tape and took a few slow steps closer. Jake confessed to everything in lockup. He held up his phone. His voice remained cold and clear, despite the wind on the open roof. There was a hidden folder on his phone. It had over 70 nude photos and videos of you. His plan was, once you ran out of money, to sell them on the dark web. That was your true love. It was as if Olivia had been struck by lightning. She froze completely. In a low, guttural, animal-like moan escaped her. Her foot slipped, and her body pitched violently outward. A firefighter nearby seized the moment and lunged forward, grabbing her arm and hauling her bodily back over the safety net. "Let me go! Just let me die!" In her wild thrashing, the collar of her hospital gown tore, revealing a not yet fully healed tattoo on her back. It read, "Jake and Olivia forever." Ethan watched coldly as she was forcibly strapped to a gurney. He turned and walked back down the stairs. 3 days later, at the Cook County Circuit Court, the judge slammed the gavel down and ruled from the bench. "All assets currently in the name of the suspect, Jake, are hereby frozen. Upon conclusion of the criminal trial, restitution shall be prioritized to the victims." Ethan walked out of the courthouse. The sunlight was bright. Liam was sitting on the steps with his backpack, playing a game on his phone. Seeing his dad come out, he put the phone away and walked over. "Dad, can I change my last name? Liam Ethan sounds way better than Liam Olivia." "Whatever you want." Ethan glanced at his watch. "Let's grab a bite. Then you're coming with me to the psychiatric center." The iron gates of the Chicago Psychiatric Center groaned shut behind them. In the visiting room, Olivia sat in a wheelchair, her gaze now completely vacant. Ethan pushed the finalized divorce agreement in front of her. "Sign." Mechanically, Olivia picked up the pen. She looked at the document, then over at Liam, who stood to the side with a face full of cold indifference. She suddenly lowered her head and drew a crooked little heart where her signature belonged. He said, "The mole on my butt was sexy," she muttered to herself. Liam turned his face away in disgust. A nurse beside them quickly retrieved the document. "Mr. Ethan, the patient currently lacks civil capacity. Even if she signed this, it would not be valid. You'll just have to wait for the court's final decree." In the cab ride home, neither father nor son spoke. At a red light, Liam watched the streetscape roll past the window and suddenly asked quietly, "Dad, do you hate her?" Ethan looked at the traffic jam stretching out ahead. His voice was steady. "It doesn't matter anymore." 2 months later, the air conditioning seemed broken in courtroom 3 of the Cook County Circuit Court. The air was stifling and heavy. Ethan sat on the plaintiff's bench, looking coldly at the man in the prison jumpsuit across the aisle at the defendant's table. In just 2 months, Jake looked like he had aged 10 years. His carefully styled blonde hair had been shaved into a buzz cut. His eyes were deeply sunken and his whole body gulped for air like a dehydrated fish from sheer nervousness. "The defendant, Jake, will rise," the bailiff commanded. Jake stood, his shackles clattering. He kept looking frantically toward the gallery, searching for something. But sitting in the front row was only his wife, Jessica, her pregnancy now clearly showing. The woman's face was as still as deep water. When her eyes met his, there was not a single ripple of emotion. In the matter of the people versus Jake, on the charges of bigamy and fraud, this court is now in session. The judge brought the gavel down. The prosecutor rose and read the indictment. The defendant, Jake, did conceal his existing marriage and, under the pretense of a romantic relationship, fabricated reasons of investment and debt repayment to defraud a sum totaling $156,000 from 7 victims. "I'm guilty. I plead guilty to all of it." Jake suddenly broke down emotionally and shouted, "I've spit the money back out. You've already seized my condo. I'm begging the court for leniency." "Bailiff, maintain order," the judge frowned. Ethan turned his head toward the witness stand. Liam sat there, straight-backed in his clean school uniform, gripping a phone tightly in his hand. It held the backup of all of Olivia's transfer records. The court will now proceed with the evidentiary phase. The prosecution will present its evidence on the projection screen. Transaction records, hotel check-in logs, and chat screenshots were displayed one by one in sharp clarity. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. The court will now admit the testimony of the witness, Olivia. Since Olivia was still under mandatory treatment at the psychiatric center and unable to appear in court, the clerk read aloud the statement she had given during a period of lucidity. "He showed me a fake divorce certificate and said that as long as I helped him through this rough patch, he would take me to the Maldives and marry me. I transferred the $238,000 my mother had saved." At this, Jake suddenly grew agitated and pounded the table of the defendant's box. "Your Honor, that money was given voluntarily. She bought me watches and bags, all to keep me as her boy toy. It wasn't fraud." Ethan gave a subtle nod to his attorney. Mark immediately raised his hand. "Your Honor, the plaintiff requests to play a key piece of video evidence." The large screen flickered, and the footage cut to the conference room of the law office. In the video, Jake was on his knees on the floor, crying with snot and tears streaming down his face as he grabbed his wife's pant leg and kowtowed frantically. "I'll pay it back. I'll pay back all of it. Please don't call the cops. That old hag threw herself at me." The video finished playing. The entire courtroom was utterly silent for a moment, and then a few undisguised snickers broke out. Jake kept his head bowed, completely slumped in his chair. When it was time for the plaintiff in the attached civil suit to speak, Ethan rose. With a completely calm expression, he submitted an evaluation report. "The defendant's actions have completely destroyed my family. Because of his mother's public scandal and the breakup of our home, my son has been diagnosed with mild depression and acute stress trauma. This is the psychological treatment evaluation from the hospital. I am requesting that the defendant pay compensation for emotional distress and ongoing treatment costs in the amount of $100,000. Liam sat in the witness stand, biting his lip hard, his eyes rimmed red as he looked at his father. After a brief recess for deliberation, the judge delivered the verdict from the bench. All rise. The defendant, Jake, on the charges of fraud and bigamy, is hereby sentenced to a consolidated term of 5 years and 6 months in state prison. The court further orders the liquidation of his condominium property in Chicago, with the proceeds to be distributed proportionally as restitution to the victims. In the attached civil suit, the defendant is ordered to pay $100,000 in compensation for emotional distress to the plaintiff, Ethan. The gavel fell with a heavy bang. Jake went utterly limp on the floor and was dragged out by 2 bailiffs. His wife, Jessica, did not look back. She steadied her lower back with one hand and walked straight out of the courtroom. "Serves him right." Liam jumped down from the witness stand and walked quickly to Ethan's side. Lowering his voice, he said, "Dad, that bastard finally got what he deserved." Ethan reached out and ruffled his son's somewhat prickly short hair. "You hungry?" Starving. Liam grinned, then added cautiously, "So, that restitution money. Will Mom get it?" A clerk from the enforcement division came over to explain. Because Ms. Olivia has been legally declared incapacitated, the restitution payment will be deposited directly into the account of her legal guardian, which is you, Mr. Ethan, to be held in trust. They walked out of the courthouse doors. In a crisp, bright autumn sun poured down. "Dad!" Liam suddenly tugged at Ethan's sleeve, his voice carrying a teenager's anxious uncertainty. "You won't. And no day decide you don't want me either, right?" Ethan stopped walking. He looked at the faint fuzz of new whiskers on his son's chin and the pimple that had scabbed over. He gripped Liam's shoulder firmly in return, his hold solid and reassuring. "Come on, let's go to IKEA. Didn't you say you wanted to pick out a new bookshelf?" The self-serve warehouse at IKEA was bustling with noise. Liam pushed a giant flatbed cart through the aisles, getting dust on the sleeves of his school uniform without a care. "This one, the white one, just like my friend has," he said, pointing at a packing box. Ethan glanced at the price tag. $59.99. "It'll fit. Let's go check out." While waiting in line to pay, Liam was scrolling idly through his phone when his thumb suddenly stopped. "Dad," Mom posted. Ethan leaned over and glanced at it. In Olivia's Instagram profile picture had been changed to a shot of the long, stark white hallway of the psychiatric ward. Her latest post was captioned, "Reborn Sun emoji." The image was of a half-dead branch seen through a barred window. "Block her," Ethan said, handing over his credit card. "The pin is your birthday." Without a second thought, Liam hit the delete button. The new apartment the father and son rented was in the loop close to Liam's school. By the time they hauled the heavy box inside, both were slicked with sweat. "This is so much better than our old place." Liam slid across the clean wooden floor in his socks. "I can even see Lake Michigan from my room." Ethan sat cross-legged on the floor, assembling the bookshelf according to the instructions. Liam helped pass him the screws at the side. After hesitating for a long while, he suddenly spoke up. "Dad, do you think you'll ever get married again?" Ethan tightened a screw without looking up. "No plans for that right now." "Oh. Well, actually, I think Ms. Davis is pretty nice," the teenager muttered under his breath. The wrench in Ethan's hand slipped and nearly hit his foot. Ms. Davis was Liam's homeroom teacher. During the last 2 parent-teacher conferences, she had shown a level of concern for him as a single father that went a little beyond the ordinary. "Worry about your own stuff and focus on your exams. Did you even pass your last math test?" Ethan said, his face stirred. Liam stuck out his tongue, scooped up a few comic books, and ran off to his room. Late at night, the assembled bookshelf stood solidly against the wall. Liam had not only put his books inside, but had also placed a photo on the most visible shelf. It was a photo of him and Ethan from their trip to Starved Rock State Park, without Olivia. Ethan pushed open the door to the second bedroom and looked in. Liam was fast asleep, hugging his pillow. He retreated to the living room. Moonlight spilled through the new curtains onto the floor. On the coffee table lay the divorce decree from the court. The bright red seal marked the final end of that 10-year marriage. Ethan opened his laptop, zipped the folder on his desktop labeled Divorce Litigation, and dragged it into a deeply encrypted drive. He then created a new document and titled it Liam's High School Education Fund Plan. His phone screen lit up. It was a text from Mark. "The proceeds from the auction of Jake's condo have been deposited into your account. Confirm receipt. Congrats on making it to shore." Ethan replied with a single word. "Okay." He walked to the window. The neon lights of Chicago were still flashing, but tonight the sky above the city was unusually clear. The next morning, just as the early light was filling the kitchen, Ethan flipped a fried egg in the pan. Amid the hum of the range hood, the doorbell rang. Ethan turned off the stove, wiped his hands, and went to open the door. Liam's homeroom teacher, Miss Davis, was standing outside. She held 2 cups of steaming coffee in her hands, a perfectly measured smile on her face. "Good morning, Mr. Ethan." "Liam left a study guide in my office yesterday. I was in the neighborhood, so I thought I'd drop it off." Seeing Ethan in his apron, she paused for a split second and then her smile deepened. "I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all, please come in," Ethan said, stepping aside. "I made too much for breakfast anyway. Would you care for some scrambled eggs and toast, Miss?" Davis. The door to the second bedroom quietly cracked open. Liam poked his head halfway out, in seeing the two silhouettes standing side by side in the kitchen. The corner of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. The rising sun streamed through the living room's floor-to-ceiling windows and landed squarely on the divorce decree on the coffee table. That bright red seal, for the first time, no longer seemed so harsh on the eyes.